Today our focus is to begin looking at factoring trinomials. So here is our trinomial. Notice there's no number in front of the x squared value. So our general position on these problems is to deal with factoring just based on this general format. Now, in order to be able to do this, I've kind of broken them down into 4 cases. So I want to be able to kind of go through those 4 cases and talk about them. And then we're going to extend this learning to applying these 4 cases to different kinds of quadratic trinomials that we're going to see. So let's take a look at this first pair. First of all, in the case 1, when you see case 1, you're going to recognize it because there's going to be 2 plus signs in it. Now notice that this is in standard form. So having these 2 plus signs is going to be our big clue that this is case 1. Now, in order to get a number like 10 on the end, if we think about either our shortcut method or FOIL, whichever way you've been using in class, to get this 10, the only way that's going to happen is a positive number times a positive number, or a negative number times a negative number. That's the only way that that's going to happen. So because this middle number here is plus, that means eventually we're going to get 2 parentheses down here that are going to have plus signs in both of them. It's the only way that I can get a positive 10 on the end. Now, if this is an x squared, that means that at some point is going to have to be x times x. So the front part of this is pretty easy to do. Now we've got to deal with a little bit more of how to get the numbers for this. So in these problems, this middle number right here in a case 1 is going to be a sum. And that middle number I just pointed out is 7. Now it's a sum because when I look at both of these values, because they're both pluses, there's going to be a spot where I'm going to have to add some things together. That's where this idea of sum comes from. And this number on the end, I'm going to factor 10. Now normally when I start out my factoring pairs, I start out with 1 and that number. So 1 and 10 would be my first pair. And then I usually would like to go in order here. So this will be 2 times 5. And those are all the pairs that I have. Now I want to look at these pairs and find a pair of these factors that give me a sum of 7. This pair would do that because the sum would be adding 2 and 5 together, which would give you 7. So that means that down here, I'm going to add a 2 and I'm going to add a 5. Now that's going to be something that helps us kind of get our numbers in the positions they need to be in. Now if I were to take this and multiply it out using either FOIL or our shortcut method, I should be able to get this back up here. This is the one spot in everything that we're going to do all year that you should be able to check your answers and know if you're on the right track before you even come to class and turn it in. Okay, now let's take a look at case 2. In case 2, this is standard form. What's different about case 2 though compared to case 1 is there's a subtraction sign here. So my big clue that it's case 2 is that there's a subtraction first and then an addition. Now, notice that we have a positive 6, just like we had a positive 10 in this one. If we have a positive 6, remember the only way I get that is a positive times a positive, or a negative times a negative. Because this middle number is a negative, that means that down here, both of these are going to have to be subtraction. Now, x squared breaks into x and x. And again, because these signs are both the same, it's going to be a sum idea. And our sum comes from this middle one here. So we have to have a sum of 5. And this number right here on the end, that 6, is going to be what I'm going to factor. So if I list my factors of 6, 1 and 6, and 2 and 3. Now I want a pair of factors of 6 that give me a sum of 5. So this pair right here would give me a sum of 5. And then I would put 2 and 3 in these spots. Okay, now notice case 1, these had a plus sign at the end. So anything that has a plus sign at the end is going to be a sum problem. And they're either going to be both positives and pluses in the problem or both negatives. Okay, let's take a look at case 3 and 4. In this one, first of all, I'm going to add a 1 here just so we don't forget about that. But for case 3, it's 2 subtractions. And I have a negative 20 at the end. So to get a negative 20, the only way that happens is a positive number times a negative number. So down here, I'm going to have a plus and a minus. Now because there's x squared here, these are still going to break into x and x. But our big issue is these are not the same sign, which means that they're different. So this is not going to be a sum problem. It's going to be a difference problem. And my difference right here is negative 1. Now the big thing that's kind of different about this piece is that a difference, you always have to pay attention to the sign. So if this is a negative 1, then I'm going to write negative 1 down here. Now, this number on the end is the one I'm going to factor. So I'm going to factor 20. So 1 and 2, or 1 and 20, excuse me, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. Now again, if you keep these in order, it'll make it much less difficult when you get a big number to deal with it that way. Now I want a pair of numbers that give me a difference of 1. So 4 and 5 are the ones that give me a difference of 1. Now if I want this to be a negative difference, that means the bigger number, which happens to be 5 here, has to go in the negative spot. And 4 would go on the plus. In other words, negative 5 plus positive 4 is going to be negative 1, which will give me the right difference. Okay, let's go to the next one. A plus and then a minus. So on this one, in case 4, I have another one of these negative numbers at the end, which means that this is going to have to be plus and minus again for this one, and still x and x. In this one, though, this middle number is going to be my difference. So that means that case 3 and 4 are very similar. And I'm going to have to factor 12. So if I factor 12, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So if I look at those, I want to find one that's going to give me a difference of 4, which means down here it would be 2 and 6. Because the difference is a positive number, the bigger number has to go here. So that's a 6 and a 2. So positive 6 plus negative 2 is going to be a positive 4. Now, in identifying as we go on, it's going to be important for us to identify what case it is, and then from that, we can start to kind of solve our problems. So let's take a look. The first example. So in this one, it's a plus plus, which means that it is case 1. So I know when I'm done, down here it's going to be x plus and x plus. Now, I know if it's case 1, it has to be a sum. My sum is from the middle, so it's 8. And this number right here is what I'm going to factor. So I have to factor 15, which is 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. So if I'm trying to go through this and find the one that's going to give me a sum of 8, I would choose 3 and 5. So 3 and 5 are going to go in these spots. Now, I am really kind of concerned to make sure that if you do it and you're not sure, multiply these back out, and then you can make sure you've got the right answer to begin with. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, on this one, it's a minus and then a plus, which means that it's case 2. Now, if it's case 2, That means these both have to have subtraction. And did you notice on this problem that it's all C's instead of X's, which means this is C and C. Now this number right here is going to be my sum because it's case 2. So sum of 9. And I need to factor 20, my last number down here, which means 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. So I want to find the one that's going to give me a sum of 9, which would 4 and 5 would give me a sum of 9. So 4 and 5 are going to go in this spot. Again, multiply them out if you're not sure about it. Then, let's try one more maybe. Oh, lucky us, we get 2 more. Okay, and this one, it's a plus and a minus. So based on what we were doing before, that's a case 4. So that means down here at the bottom when I get done with this, if it's case 4, one of these is going to be plus, and one of these is going to be minus. Now this right here is my difference. So my difference is going to be positive 13. And I need to factor 48. Now the big deal about factoring 48 is this is probably the first time we've had a bigger number that we're going to be factoring. So this is going to have probably a lot more pairs of numbers than we've had. So 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12, and 6 and 8. So in this problem, if I want to find the one that has a difference of 13, it would be here. Now that 13 is positive, so the bigger number of these two goes with the plus. So 16 is going to go here, and 3 is going to go here. Okay, let's try one more here, see if we can get it in before our time is up. If these are 2 negatives, that means this is a case 3, which means that we have to have a difference of -5. Now again, if it's case 3, one of these is going to be plus and one of them is going to be minus. No different in this problem because they're n's than there was with x's in the last one. So if I'm looking at this, I now know that I have to factor 24. So 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. Which means that this pair right here is going to be our difference. 8 minus 3 would give us 5. Now because this difference is -5, that means the bigger number, which is 8, goes with the minus sign, and the 3 goes with the plus.